Want to know what a real sports bettor is betting on in week 4 of college football on the RAS College Football Show? You will find out. Eddie Walls, what is your best bet on this week's board?
It's going to be Coastal Carolina, Virginia, under 55.5. There's some 56 out there. Pretty simple kind of thing here. When I lose on a team a lot, I do a lot of work on that team. Last year, Coastal Carolina went and they hired Tim Beck, who was an offensive coordinator at NC State, who didn't have a lot of success, but was able to figure out a way to win. I was betting overs because he had Grayson McCall and a bunch of wide receivers that were all conference guys, a great offensive line. And he was just costing me money left and right. Like, it was unbelievable. If this guy was behind by 10 points, he never sped up in the game one time. And I realized then that he was a very, very big under coach. And that has not carried over yet this year because he's played FCS, he's played Jackson State. And then last week he got to play Temple and kind of show who he was. Tony Elliott, we came into the season thinking this is going to be a very big over. If you remember correctly, we played Wake Forest over and released it, and it won.
Yep.
This is a different scenario. Wake Forest played fast enough to justify that number. This number is actually too high to justify that. Tony Elliott also, much like Tim Beck, wants to run the ball, wants to control the clock. He has a quarterback that makes a lot of errors, so he likes to limit those errors. We saw that against Maryland last week where things can go awry for Calandria in a pretty big way pretty fast. So yeah, under 56, under 55.5 is probably my best bet left on the board.
Love it. If you guys have been paying attention to the show the first 3 weeks, as you know, Eddie has been spot on. And if you've been enjoying those previews and you like the picks, you like the under on the Virginia Coastal Carolina, hit the subscribe button below. If you're looking for more picks, of course, we'll talk about some current numbers in the biggest games of the week, but also consider heading over to raspicks.com/CFB. You see it down there to follow the CFB service and bet the releases with Right Angle Sports in real time. As always, Eddie, let's get to the biggest game of the week. Illinois, Nebraska. We will kick it off with Illinois, Nebraska. Nebraska minus 7.5 with a total of 42.5. What do we see in this one?
We see two teams that haven't played anybody yet. I'm just being honest. I'd love to give Nebraska their flowers and say that this team is possibly going to win the Big Ten. It's very easy to say that. They've upgraded the quarterback position. They've upgraded the wide receiver position. Their defense is going to be absolutely stellar under Rule. There's no way around that. But their best quality of win so far is Colorado. We're still not sold on what Colorado is. Mm-hmm. We know that Colorado can beat up on CSU and control that kind of game. Yep. But Illinois' best win so far is against Kansas, who looked like a powerhouse coming in. They lose their offensive coordinator. Their quarterback has injury woes. He doesn't look right. You think, wow, they got an impressive win against Kansas. Then Kansas loses as 9-point favorites the next week against UNLV. I think that I like dogs in these kind of spots normally. Just going to be honest with you. I just think that, like, when you have two teams that haven't played anybody and one team's getting a lot more credit than the other and they have the same record, they came in fairly close in my power numbers preseason. I think they were both probably low 30s, mid 30s, somewhere in there. I think it was probably around 4 on neutral, so around 7. I'm probably getting a half point of value if I'm lucky here. Honestly, I thought Monday morning this game would go up before it went down. So I'm a little fooled by the market. If it gets to a cheap 7, like 7.05, I might have to think about it. But I mean, I was thinking I was going to get a 10 or a 10.5. It was always going to be under or pass for me.
Okay.
Both of these defenses are far further ahead than their offenses, in my opinion. Also, I have an offensive coordinator at Nebraska that isn't really, fond of scoring a lot of points.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, but I can't get as low as 42.5. I think I was around 43, 44. That was never really on the board for me. Not willing to force anything here, but I mean, like a 7 minus 0.5, a cheap 7, I probably take a gander with and probably reevaluate. I think that this kind of game really goes to show how much more efficient the market is than past years. Because, I mean, we've seen a decrease in scoring. So you're going to see dogs take action more than favorites in the past. And people are keen to that. But these numbers just really aren't moving the way that I would suspect this early in the season. A Friday night game at home, with a Nebraska team with all the momentum in the world. I really, really am shocked that this number didn't go up before it went down. That's giving a lot of credit to Illinois, and maybe rightfully so. Cool game. Definitely going to be watching. No action at this point. What about you?
Yeah, I agree totally. I think of the games that we're going to preview, this is probably the one I'm least interested in. I don't necessarily want to lay 7.5 with Nebraska, and I think the point you made is the best one, which is if we have these two teams that are rated basically the same, why are we giving Nebraska so much more credit when their resumes are, you could put them next to each other, do a blind test, you wouldn't be able to probably designate. So I would definitely agree with the dog in this one, just because low total, and I just have no interest in laying the touchdown plus with Nebraska. The only non-conference game I believe that we're going to talk about in this slate, Miami and South Florida. The battle for South Florida this weekend in Tampa. Miami is minus 17 with a total of 64.5. Eddie, any interest in stepping in front of the hurricane train?
I mean, I guess when you say interest, like if I wake up Saturday morning and it's 20, then it's a lot of interest. At 17.5, I'm slightly interested. Again, who has Miami beaten? Why are they like, I see them in some people's top fives. That's absolutely crazy. So they beat Florida. Florida just lost at home in a semi-embarrassing fashion to Texas A&M quarterback. They're a dumpster fire. So, like, are we giving them a ton of credit for beating Ball State, who I have like 132nd in my power numbers? They still haven't played a close game. USF played Alabama extremely close. You can make an argument they should have won that game. They fell apart late in the fourth quarter. The biggest issue I have is that South Florida doesn't pass the ball entirely well. If they did, I would play this over, and I would feel really, really good about it. I think the Cam Ward can definitely eat this secondary. I think 17 is too much. What do you think? You got anything here?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make it official a little bit later, but I think there are a lot of reasons to like South Florida in this game. Last week they got down 14-0 to Southern Miss as an 11-point road favorite, and you're kind of wondering, is playing Alabama kind of catching up with them here from just a physicality standpoint? And from that point on, they just absolutely rolled. The coach called a fake field goal. Their running backs had a season high in attempts, and Byron Brown is running and throwing all over the field. I just think he's one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in college football. And I think Alex Golesh, he comes from Tennessee. We'll touch on Tennessee, but, you come from the Heupel tree, you're going to find ways to score points when you have dynamic quarterbacks. So, I think USF is live against the number here. I truly do. It's a little intimidating step in front of Miami just because of all that talent they have offensively. But, I just think situationally, this is the biggest home game South Florida has played in a long, long time. They're breaking records with student attendance and tickets. It's their last tune-up before conference play begins, and you're basically talking about 3 scores here. So I think South Florida, with their quarterback play and how creative they are offensively, I think they'll find a way to keep this game competitive within that number.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've talked me into it, sir.
Yeah. That's brave. Right, that's brave considering my track record on this show.
Come on, with 3 plays? I mean, we're talking about a sample size of 3 plays. It's crazy.
That's right.
Don't worry about that.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we'll keep on plugging away, man. We'll keep plugging away. All right, moving right along. Kansas State and one of my favorite quarterbacks in college, Avery Johnson, at BYU, minus 6.5 with a total of 48. Right angle was on Kansas State, minus 6 against Arizona, and it was just an absolute destruction after halftime. But now they're laying 6.5 at BYU. What do you make of this number?
Well, I got to be honest with you. I don't think that I have a very good read on BYU. I mean, I think I played some under against SMU, which made sense to me. But then, like last week, I took Wyoming. I thought like 11 was absolutely crazy to play in Laramie. And I mean, BYU, I knew that they were going to be a little bit better this year. A lot of people forget that they were a touchdown away from going to a bowl game and knocking Oklahoma State out of a championship, Big 12 title, Big 12 championship game. They threw the kitchen sink at him. I didn't like their quarterback. I really liked their defensive coordinator, Hill, that they got from Weber State last year. He had no players. He's put that together masterfully. He had a heart attack a couple weeks ago, apparently, but still was able to make the game last week and crush me. So, yeah, I mean, I cannot believe that we're talking about BYU as only 6.5-point favorites, but they've earned that. Absolutely. I mean, they've covered every single game. They've looked very, very impressive. They shut down SMU. I don't care who SMU's quarterback was in that game. They weren't getting anywhere on that defense. And they're really, really big on both the offensive line and defensive line. The only thing that bothers me about BYU is they don't have a running game. So they got to pass the ball with a quarterback who's pretty iffy at times in Retzlaff. I don't have any issues with Kansas State's pass defense. I know they looked bad against Tulane, but they probably didn't expect a freshman quarterback to look that good.
Right.
Look at what they did against Arizona last week.
Exactly.
That being said, I made this game 7.5. There's really nothing there for me on the side. The total, I mean, it's a total guessing game. It's a tough environment for Avery Johnson for sure. People forget that he's really, really. You watched the clock in the first half last Arizona. You were quickly reminded when you forgot how much time was left on the clock and let it run out instead of them getting points there. It's just a pass for me, which is something that I have to. There's certain teams that I'm just bad at right now that I have to just stay away from, and BYU is definitely one of them. I just need more of a sample size before I can jump in.
Yeah, just one last note on this. I mean, you're trying to find teams that you're interested in, playing on for the rest of the year, and I just think Kansas State is maybe not necessarily this week, but they're definitely one of those teams for me. With that, I mean, that quarterback you mentioned is like he's only going to improve. It feels like, and his speed is just remarkable. And with the maturity and decision making, if that improves with the way they shut down Arizona in that second half after that opening drive, that's definitely a team that I want to be involved with the rest of the way. All right, let's move on here. We got action.
Yeah.
We got action in this one. And of course, Right Angle does have a release on this game. Utah +3. It is now Oklahoma State -2.5. This is flipped. It went all the way to Utah -2.5, and it's now been bet all the way back to Oklahoma State being a 2.5-point favorite with a total of 52. Obviously, Eddie, this is just all about the availability of quarterback Cam Rising. It feels like we were going through deja vu here. What do you do with this game, not really knowing whether or not he's going to play?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a bad spot. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, if he doesn't play, I'm pretty screwed. I'm on the over at 51.5, and it was a very big play for me. I think that Oklahoma State has a very underrated, undervalued passing attack. Bowman is very, very experienced. He has 4 wide receivers to their NFL talent for sure. Great offensive line for both of these teams. I have a hard time believing that Utah's going to go out there and try to grind this out and play very, very slow, especially with them not having the secondary that they're used to having. Whittingham likes to score, by the way. A lot of people think of him as an undercoach. That's because he has a quarterback that gets a cut on his hand and misses 3 games, possibly. He's never really had that dynamic quarterback that stays healthy for the last few years. So he's been kind of under heavy, and that's interesting that the market feels that way about him. But if you remember, he was never afraid in the Pac-12 to kind of punch it out with some of these teams. He's a smart guy. He's not going to lay back there, especially, I mean, God forbid he has a backup quarterback. Utah, people don't think about this with Utah, but this year Utah had to go out in the transfer portal and get guys in the secondary that were not Utah caliber. It's a new era of college football. You can't address every single need that you have through the transfer portal. It was very clear to me that pass defense could be an issue for them. So I kind of had this situation circled, and we heard nothing but great reports about Rising. He was just held out for precautionary reasons, blah, blah, blah. And then last night on a Wednesday night where the market really, really isn't moving a whole lot on a Wednesday. It's normally the night that you take your girlfriend out to dinner, walk the dogs, whatever, go play some poker, do whatever you got to.
Right.
I'm getting alerts out of nowhere like, hey, what's going on with Rising? I'm like, how the hell would I know, And I'm calling people, texting people. And I got nothing for you. I mean, nobody says anything except what's supposed to be said at this time. Like, he's practicing, everything's fine. This move might just be that a really big group loves Oklahoma State. And I can tell you that Gundy in these spots at home is almost undefeated in the last decade. I mean, it's unbelievable, his track record. I do think that Utah is the much more talented team. I do think that there's ways to attack them. I do think that Oklahoma State's defense is very, very suspect. Maybe somebody just thought, like, wrong team's favored here. We're going to pound it while we have the opportunity, and let's get down as much money as possible before somebody else sees it. But this is such a move that it makes you wonder for sure what's going on.
If you are somebody that has the over and maybe Utah, is there any maybe just general guidance? I mean, other than you better make sure you're on your P's and Q's with that injury report.
Yeah, I mean, don't start smoking. That's going to be bad for your health.
That's right.
Try to still remind yourself that there are good things going on in the world that you can appreciate. I mean, what am I supposed to say here? I mean, snaps. I mean, obviously Whittingham's used to just lying to everybody. Yeah. So if Rising retired and didn't tell anybody, we're not going to know until 25 seconds before the game or until they take the field and if he's in a jersey or not. There's nothing you're going to know until then unless somebody leaks the information. That's right. And then you're going to have to be in front of a desktop and you're going to have to move quickly if that's the case. But I mean, I mean, for the most part, just go and eat ice cream and enjoy yourself for the week.
That's sound advice. That's sound advice for sure. A little more certainty in the next one. Tennessee at Oklahoma. This is an SEC game. This is Tennessee's opener at Oklahoma. Tennessee laying 7, total of 56.5. Tennessee has beaten up on everybody, but a common theme maybe that they have played no one really either other than NC State, if you count them. Any thoughts in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I I bet a very small amount on Tennessee, and then I bet another small amount. So I guess I have about a half unit. What happened here is that my numbers just keep on getting lower and lower and lower on Oklahoma every single week to where my number just can't be right. It's just not possible that my number is right at this point. Oklahoma has put together 3 games now against 3 opponents that at least 2 of them, I don't think will be making a bowl under any circumstance, in Houston and Temple. They never completed a 3rd down conversion against Temple. They were lucky to survive against Houston. Last week versus Tulane kind of falls apart when they get close there. Otherwise, that's a much closer game than possible. And I would just go out and say that, if you like Tennessee, it's probably 7 or less. Don't go above 7, that's for sure. If you like Oklahoma and you can find some talking points, I'll give them to you really quick. It's Nico's first actual road game. Their secondary was a humongous question all season long. This will be their first test against a semi-capable quarterback with NFL wide receivers and Deion Burks. That being said, I still like Tennessee. It's just not something that I can bet confidently and adamantly about. It's just my numbers show that I have to, and I can never ignore that. And also, this might be a good spot for an under as well, because let's face it, Oklahoma's playing much slower in the past. Their defense is improved on some level.
Right.
And I said this is Nico's first test on the road in a true road environment. All those things add up to where you could say that under makes a lot of sense. But I was pretty close on the number there.
And there has to be some thought if you're Oklahoma. We can't try to trade here with this Tennessee offense, right? There has to be some level of ball control if you're trying to win that game from the Sooners' perspective.
Sure.
So it totally makes sense. All right, and then our last game before we maybe open it up for some questions. USC at Michigan. This number is USC -5 with a total of 44. Obviously, quarterback change for the Wolverines in this one, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that just feels like all of these favorites on the road have been winning. And it's really, really easy to just say, well, that trend can continue because we don't know what the floor is for Michigan, right? I mean, if you're not able to move the ball against Arkansas State for a half, you're not able to move it on Fresno for a full game, and you get blown out by Texas, and the only time you score is, 3 minutes left in the 4th quarter, then what do we know? What do we feel confident about here? Well, I could tell you a few things that you could look for as positives. They are making the switch to Orgy, so you know that the offense will at least be somewhat more efficient. He's more of a runner, and they do have an offensive line that's big enough to probably get a push on USC a little bit here.
Yep.
USC has overperformed, but again, guess who? LSU looks like they don't have a defense whatsoever. They gave up 400 yards to South Carolina, and they beat up on Utah State, which in a game that was never competitive. What was the number on this game a month ago? Probably Michigan minus 2.5, 3. Now all of a sudden you're looking at possibly 6.5 points by kickoff. It feels like a huge overreaction. Do I want to step in front of the falling knife that's Michigan? No. Do I want to back USC and Miller Moss, who's never played a road game until just now? This will be his first one at the Big House. That's an awfully tall task. If anything, I missed the number early in the week on the under, but I still have a hard time taking these USC unders. I mean, I have Alex Grinch just still stuck in my mind. I don't have D'Anthony Lynn. I mean, I still have some of last year's numbers left over. I have a 2-game sample size. How much can I adjust down? I can't adjust down 20 points. So I think it's just a clear-cut pass for me. You have anything here?
I do not. I certainly do not have anything on Michigan and that offense, and trying to guess what they're going to look like under Orgy. And a USC total at 44 is blowing my mind. It's absolutely blowing my mind in 2024. I just feel like we should frame this, because I didn't think we'd ever see it again or ever under Lincoln. We do have a few questions. If you guys have some questions while we're here doing the show live, certainly get those in. Angelo asks, Auburn, and they're all coming in at the same time. Auburn and Arkansas. Any thoughts there? It looks, I believe Auburn is minus 3-ish at the moment.
So actually, this was going to be my best bet this game, and then it moved right before. Well, it moved this morning, and I realized that I couldn't give it out. I bet pretty aggressively under in this game at a number that is very well gone. So I'm going to give you the talking points, and I'll tell you what I would do at the current number. The talking points are this. Auburn has a freshman quarterback. DJ Durkin is probably one of the most underrated defensive coordinators in all of college football. He has a really, really good defensive line and secondary for that matter. I think that Hugh Freeze is often thought of as an offensive guru, but he actually plays fairly slow. And I don't think with the amount of inexperience he has a quarterback that this is going to be a very non-vanilla approach. On the other hand, Arkansas is getting a lot of credit on offense for playing UAB, blowing out an FCS opponent, and playing Oklahoma State. All three of those, well, two of those are, I don't know anything about the FCS opponent. It looked like a video game. Two of those guys are going to end up in the bottom 75 of defenses by the end of the year. One of them is going to end up in the probably 110th range. I thought it was a humongous overreaction. I saw people betting over in the beginning. I don't know if those were fakes on Monday. Currently at 55, 56, it would be a very, very small wager for me. I'm right around 54, 54 and a half. A 56 would be a little bit less than a half unit play for me, which wouldn't be substantial enough for me to actually make the play. I will tell you that I also think, as much as I just said, it's a freshman quarterback, not a lot of weapons. I think that I've seen enough out of Taylor Green over the years that a road spot in an SEC environment is going to be something that he's not quite prepared for. This is a guy that really couldn't handle the crowd last year against Washington and ended up losing the job halfway through the year at Boise. I know they've done tremendous things with him. I know they've upgraded the offensive coordinator tremendously with Petrino. He is not somebody I'm looking to back. So as more money comes up on Arkansas, I think that I would probably consider Auburn a little bit.
There you have it. Just to recap before we get out of here, Eddie's best bet this week, Virginia, Coastal Carolina under 55.5. I believe you're going for 4-0 here with the best bets. Any thoughts on Kansas, West Virginia?
Yeah, a lot of it, but I'll make it brief. I played under pretty much right at the same number that it's at right now. 58 is what I played it at. I think that there's something drastically wrong with Kansas's offense. I think that their defense, their pass defense specifically, is much further ahead than their offense. West Virginia's pass defense is going to be a thorn in my side all year long because it's not good. But I think that they try to control the clock with a very, very heavy dose of large running backs. And we saw the same formula that they used against Pitt last week, where they were up 10 with 3 minutes left. They let it get away. I think that Neil Brown's smart enough to realize that he does not have the defense that he did last year. So you have two teams that are kind of trying to put it together on offense to protect themselves. One's trying to protect itself from its defense. The other one's trying to play. Both teams play incredibly slow. Kansas is with Leopold is never going to be fast. I couldn't get to 58. I understand the sentiment that eventually Kansas's offense is going to have to turn around. UNLV's defense is probably better than West Virginia's. Is it 15 points better, 10 points better? I don't think so. So 58 under was a play for me.
So that'll do it. My best bet this week, I have to get on the board. Otherwise, I'm just going to start using this as fakes because I've somehow managed to move the market against me 2 points 2 straight weeks, and I've lost both. So if I do this a third time, I am going to start using this show as a fake. South Florida plus 17 at home against Miami for all the reasons that we talked about. It's the biggest home game for USF in 20 years, probably. Student ticket sales have been, the records have been broken. And I believe very much in the coach of this quarterback being able to figure out some things offensively to keep this within the number, especially with Miami starting conference short week, the week after. Thanks everybody for stopping by. If you enjoyed the week 4 preview here on the RES CFB show, hit that subscribe button below. And if you're looking for more picks, obviously go to respicks.com/CFB to follow the college football service and bet the releases with us in real time. Eddie, thanks for the time as always, man. Good luck this weekend, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you so much. Have a great